Well, greetings, welcome to the dividing line. I suppose I should turn that thing back on again, huh? Whoever is supposed to set all this stuff up, you get, you know, as you get older, the list of things you can remember in short-term memory just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's really sad. What are we doing here? I don't know. I was just looking at Twitter, and I've said this many times. If I thought this world was just bouncing down the road any old direction without any goal or end to it, which is what secularism requires you to believe, I would. I was just reading a tweet about the drone technology, and look, I've come to a lot of conclusions, and this one's sad for me to have to come to this conclusion, but it seems very, very obvious to me. The United States is responsible for Ukraine, and I was there in 2014 when the U.S. toppled the Ukrainian government and put a new government in place. And look, I don't care where you stand. We went this close to nuclear war, and we're that close again. We went this close to nuclear war with Russia, the Soviet Union, when they tried to put ballistic missiles in Cuba. Ukraine is closer, shared border, and we're trying to put them in NATO. It's so obviously meant to start war that it's hard to even understand. And so, what's going on there? It's easy for me to go, this is a testing ground. We are sacrificing young Russian lives and young Ukrainian lives to test new technologies. And the drone technology is what I was looking at. It just come up on the screen. I wasn't looking for anything. It just popped up. And I was reading through it. And the use of AI controlling drones by satellite, man, there's no defense for it. There's isn't a defense for it. So if I did not believe that there is a reason, I'm not sure how provisionists handle stuff like this, because they absolutely detest God's sovereign decree, but they don't want to say that God isn't somewhat in control, and there's sort of a purpose at the end of all these things, just not in the individual things. I don't know how any of all that works, but I'm starting to understand a little bit more why drugs are the way they are in our land. And, when the wife texts you live on the air. So, it's always, and by the way, because I will forget this, tomorrow would be normally when we would do the dividing line. But tomorrow is my wife and I's 42nd anniversary. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about, 40 was sort of big, 45 we'll have to do something. We're just going to go to dinner, nothing really special. She's taking care of her mom, and so, that's her job right now. And then all of a sudden it hit me. We are only 8 years from the big 5-0. And then it hit me. It just does not seem that long ago that I helped my parents, who are now both gone, celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. And we did something, and I went into debt to do it, but I had to. I got a limo. It was the first time I had ever been in a limo. It was the first time my mom had ever been in a limo. And we took the whole family, including my kids, to I don't know. It's probably not the fanciest restaurant in Phoenix anymore. Um, the one that goes around at the top of the Hyatt region, Compass Room. Yeah. I think every major city has a restaurant somewhere downtown that goes around in circles. It's just, I think that's sort of a necessary thing to be a big city. And I've got pictures of that night and just how excited they were and stuff like that. So I'm just letting my kids know you've got 8 years. Okay. So I sort of set the bar, and you were there. Both of you were there. So you all need to get together. You got 8 years. Start the savings plan. And find a good restaurant and a good place to. By then they'll all be EV limos, and they'll be about this big, and like the size of a Volkswagen Bug or something like that. And you'll have to get government approval and all that stuff. But yeah, 8 years, only 8 years from 50 years of marriage. And I remember Summer coming home, and she was working at Starbucks years and years and years ago. I think it was when we had just had our 30th anniversary. And she told her friends at Starbucks that her parents, her actual physical parents, had been married for 30 years, and nobody believed her. They wouldn't believe her. No one's married that long. No. They literally did not believe her that her parents had been married for 30 years. Of course, when she went to Cortez High School as a sophomore, started there, in her PE class, she came home after she had to take PE because she hadn't taken it at a Christian school a year earlier. She was sort of shocked. She said, I am the only girl in my PE class living with my natural parents. Only one. Nobody else was. And man, that says a lot. But anyways, kids, 8 years. You got 8 years. The big old 5-0's heading our direction, and I'm hoping for big things. Hoping for big things from y'all. I can see the look on both of their faces right now going, well, Dad, you've taught us that disappointment is a part of life. That's what I'll get. Disappointment's a part of life, Dad. You told us that. So anyways, back to what's going on in the world and frightening stuff. I guess Ukraine launched missiles into Russian territory, American missiles, multi-warhead missiles into Russian territory. And Russia's like, and I Lord have mercy. But like I said, if I didn't think there was a purpose to all this stuff, I would. Tim Bushong on Twitter. Do you see that? Now that's a shirt. Yes, it is a shirt. See, there's Deanie. That's my little Deanie boy. Right there. That's my little kitty Deanie, and I have 3 of these shirts. One has Sophie, one has Fox, and one has Deanie. And I wasn't expecting to do the show today. Just like, they're really nice and cool in the sense of being cool. And right now in Phoenix, it is not cool. It is that time of year. It's, it was 115 a couple days ago. So you wear cool stuff. I'm wearing shorts, and yeah, that's what you do in Arizona for, about 6 months out of the year. This is what you do. So, anyhow, I also ran into an article, and I looked it up from yesterday, and I'll just summarize it. Back in 2020, there was a young woman who was attacked and raped by a gang of immigrants in Germany. And we are seeing this all the time in the United States. Murders of young girls. Part of the reason for this, remember, one of the things that we got in so much trouble for when we wrote the, what's become the Dallas Statement on social justice, was we said that there are some societies that are better than others. And obviously, a society that is based upon God's law, seeks to honor God, and therefore honor man as being made in the image of God and things like that, are better than societies that don't. Well, we were just, oh, how dare you talk colonialism and blah, 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 and all the rest of the stupid stuff. And so we have thrown open the borders in Europe, thrown open the borders in the United States. Just come on in. There's no control. Send us your criminals, the worst of the worst, and we'll let them prey on our young people and murder our young women and rape them and things like that, because that's we want to die. We're committing national suicide, and because we've been taken over by our enemies. And anybody, by the way, anyone in the United States in the year 1972 would have identified the leaders of this nation in light of what they're doing, in light of the Tyler Cherry, the new White House Associate Communications Director. If you had shown a picture of these sexual perverts, what they're doing with abortion, what they're doing with homosexuality, what they're doing in opening the borders and encouraging a massive invasion, the fact that that if you're on one side of the political spectrum, the law comes after you. Other side, you can do whatever you want. Every single person in this nation in 1972 would have condemned these people as traitors. Every single one. Absolutely true. And everybody knows it. Everybody who was alive in 1972 knows it. And that's the situation we're facing. So in Germany, this young lady was raped by, I think, 9 different people. It got so bad at one point that they were recording it on WhatsApp and inviting their friends to come to get in on it. Eventually, they recovered DNA evidence, semen, of 8 of the 9 in the woman. One did jail time. The rest were paroled on their own recognizance, basically. Just got away with it, even though they had DNA and the WhatsApp evidence. And then what happened was a number of people in Germany got their WhatsApp address and started sending them horrible messages about how they are horrible people. You know what Germany's doing? They're tracking every single one of them down, and they're getting greater prison sentences than the rapists for offending the rapists. You just sit here and you go, this is what happens when you have a legal system, that you're no longer a culture of law, you're a culture of men, and the law just simply is whatever is in fashion right now. And so what's in fashion right now is leftist, narrative-driven, woke insanity all across Europe and the United States. And that's what you get. That's what you get. It is fundamentally disgusting. I mentioned, just in passing, Tyler Cherry, who is now receiving government money, just as the White House press secretary and that other idiot that kept stealing women's suitcases and just again, the government, the regime in Washington seems to have weekly meetings going, all right, we haven't been destroyed by fire and brimstone yet. That means we're failing. How can we be better than Sodom and Gomorrah? How can we eventually just force God's hand to nuke us with fire and brimstone? That seems to be a weekly meeting in the White House. And Biden's not there because Biden is if he's still alive. I'm not even sure he's still alive. I'm wondering how many Biden clones there are running around the White House right now, and which one they're getting drugged up for the debate. But the people who have been running everything for over 3 years now, these are some of the most evil. They're traitors, every single one of them, but they're some of the most morally evil people I can even imagine. They truly, truly are. And so now we have this Tyler Cherry, and he had to post on Twitter. First, he posts on Twitter, past social media posts from when I was younger do not reflect my current views, period. I support this administration's agenda and will continue my communications work focused on our climate and environmental policies. And then he purges his timeline. But of course, the internet doesn't forget. So here's some of the things he's written. Police equals slave patrols. Voter ID equals poll taxes. Neither slavery nor Jim Crow were that long ago. We just evolved. About time to recall that the modern day police system is a direct evolution of slave patrols and lynch mobs. Abolish ICE. You name it, and he said it. Okay, it is just, there's just quote after quote after quote. He didn't get them deleted in time. And it's insane. The man's insane. He is a sexual pervert on the far end of the sexual pervert scale, which we're starting to discover there is no end on that type of stuff. And this is being done purposefully by the regime. This is their way of saying to you and I, we hate you. We're coming for you. We don't want you to have anything to do with running this country. We're going to run this country into the ground, and there's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. And here's another example. Look at this guy. And you're going to have to pay him, and you're going to have to listen to him, and all the rest of that kind of stuff. That's where we are. That's where we are. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a tremendous number of studies that have come out over the past year. Published studies in Lancet and in other medical journals, peer-reviewed, doesn't necessarily mean anything anymore, but you would like to think in the medical field it would have some impact, but it doesn't. Money has completely corrupted. The pharmaceutical companies own everybody. So the pharmaceutical companies can get anything through as long as they want to pay enough to do it, because they own everybody. They know where all the skeletons are buried. They own everybody. All of the governmental agencies that are supposed to be watching the pharmaceutical companies are staffed by former employees of the pharmaceutical companies, and vice versa. People leave those government agencies and end up in high positions in the pharmaceutical company. The incest is just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. The corruption beyond commentary. Absolutely beyond commentary. And so numerous studies demonstrating that what a number of us were saying, starting in, probably for me, September of 2020, when I first read my first article about what these new vaccines are going to be, because, everybody's talking about vaccine. Okay, great. It's the virus, it's a deadened form of the virus, the standard old style vaccine technology. No. This is mRNA. And I'm like, mRNA? Now, I am not a scientist, but I was Department Fellow in Anatomy and Physiology at Grand Canyon College in a day and did real well in my classes there. And I did a lot of study of genetics and DNA, mRNA, all those types of things. And yeah, that was many years ago. So we've learned a whole lot more since then. But I know the language and I know the vocabulary and have read fair amount of stuff since then too. And I'm like, what's going on? And so I start reading up on this stuff, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What is going on here? This is dangerous. They have not been able to get these things approved because they're dangerous. And so as we get closer and closer to the rollout, I'm like, no. I'm not even thinking about this. Give me at least 5 years of safety data. And by the way, we're not at 5 years yet. Okay? We're not even close to it yet. You give me at least 5 years of safety data, and I'll give it a thought. But they're like, nope. This is what we got to do. And you start looking at the people who are in charge. You understand what was going on here. Once again, the people with the power want to accomplish certain things, and they're pushing it. And so I'm very thankful. I actually saw someone who tweeted me this morning and said it was because of you I didn't get the jab. Thank you. And I'm like, I had posted a interview that secular media did with a member of the Army National Guard who has had a stroke and 3 heart attacks. And the Army's own medical documentation says this is the result of the vaccine. She had no problems before that, and now all this stuff. And everybody knows if you're literally sitting there going, it's just anecdotal evidence that this has anything to do with any heart issues at all, you're an idiot. How many shots did you get? Because there are now studies demonstrating that the mRNA shots diminish cognition, the functioning of the brain. Well, there may be a connection here. Maybe. It's just astonishing to me that people have not gotten to the point yet. There are some people so invested in what they did, the choices they made at that time, that it's like, nope, that stuff is just absolutely perfectly good, and we should be using it for everything, and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, wow. The number of studies of all the adverse reactions that have taken place, and the fact that the things just didn't work. It just didn't work. They didn't give you the protection they promised to give you. Should be enough that, I said this morning, I said, my inbox still isn't filled with all the apologies for, 2020. There were people, we had supporters who stopped supporting us, and, just all sorts of nastiness heading our direction. I did have one guy who said, I didn't know about you then, but I would have been mad at you. I would have been, but by the time I found you, I'd come to understand what was going on myself anyway. So there you go. But that's neither here nor there right now. By the way, real quick, I did retweet this morning. Apologia Studios put out a video that stole my book title called The Fatal Flaw. Lies, Laws, and Pro-Life Deception. And they're pushing it today, and the reason is this is the anniversary of the 2-year anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And it's just a reminder, the pro-life industry will tell you, this is a huge landmark and all the rest of this stuff. Abortion is legal in all 50 states. Okay? And there are more abortions taking place now than there were 2 years ago. And there's reasons for all of that. And Apologia Studios put out a video, and look it up. You'll find it to be useful. Just a reminder also, I am going to get to a video because we weren't going to do the program, and so I was just starting to put stuff together, and I started going, oh yeah, I was going to talk about, there was that. Eventually ended up with a list probably longer than I'll be able to get to. But Megan Basham noted that a little over a month ago, quietly, the Biden regime, she calls it the Biden administration. Rich will tell you, I've been consistent about this from 2021. I have said we should not call it the Biden administration. We should call it the Biden regime. Because an administration is administering a previously established legal system. And they're not administering anything. They are destroying everything. So I've called it the Biden regime from the start. They quietly enacted an HHS rule. Because remember, our system does... We stopped being a constitutional republic quite a while ago. Let's just be honest. When was the last time you saw bipartisan, for the best of the country action by the House and the Senate together? Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Anything that happens now is all executive orders, administrative state, stuff that the founders not only could never have imagined, but feared that very type of thing happening. And here it is. So that's where we are. I don't even know why we bothered to elect these people, because they accomplish nothing and they can do nothing. So you have an HHS rule that designates Christians unfit to be foster parents. Why? Because it requires supporting any foster child in their gender identity and same-sex attraction. This is, and so you're surprised by Tyler Cherry? Shouldn't be. We have literally been taken over by the city council of Sodom and Gomorrah. We've been taken over by the city council of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's where we are. Yeah, I think they would have blushed at some of the stuff that we do. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Amazing. I did, I've got a little, I like getting these things. I really do. And I appreciate people who take the time to send them to me. At Cave to the Cross. It's Cave to the Cross podcast. Don't know anything about them. But back on June 7th, whoever has the account here, wrote, working solo nights for a long time, randomly stumble upon James White and interesting teachings on textual criticism. Okay. Who knows how those algorithms work? God's in charge of them, thankfully. Then I listened to his Hebrew study. Wow, there's a jump. I've not seen that connection before. First, you're looking for textual critical stuff, run into my stuff. Okay, that'll happen. And then you find the Hebrews study on sermon audio. Actually, now that I think about it, I think someone put the Hebrews study on YouTube. I think it is somewhere. Then I find out about this thing called Reformed Calvinism, and that they do evangelism and do it well. Mind changed. And when I am thankful, honestly, that I haven't tried to be, the old Bible answer man type thing where you cover everything. But I also, we weren't, we started off with just one subject, and, I sort of resisted anything else, but it just, I was forced to go from, you got Mormonism going on, and then lots of people asking questions about Jehovah's Witnesses, and so we dive into that, and then that connects you to all sorts of issues, and Benny Diaz comes along and says, yeah, but the Roman Catholics are doing this, and so over time there was a widening of the field, and because there's been a widening of the field, because we deal with a lot of different subjects, we don't just deal with Mormonism, we don't just deal with Calvinism, we don't just deal... We deal with textual criticism and church history and systematic theology and all sorts of things along the way. We end up intersecting with people's areas of interest in some really interesting ways. And so, I'll stand there at G3, and I've been invited to speak at the G3 National Conference in 2025, all assuming there's going to be a 2025. So if there is a G3 National Conference and you can still travel in 2025, I'm going to be there. Looking forward to it. And have actually already made my request as to text and topic. Whether that will happen or not yet, I don't know. Anyway, you stand there and you talk for hours and hours and hours I'll stand at our booth and there'll be lines and we'll talk to people. And it's fascinating to see how this connected to that, connected to that, connected to that. And you're just like, wow, that is really amazing. Never would have thought. And it certainly wasn't our intention when we first addressed this subject to be impacting somebody over here on this subject. The providence of God, I think someday God's going to allow us to see all the glories of his creation through hundreds of billions of galaxies and millions of trillions of planets and all the rest of that fun stuff. But we're also going to get to see what he did in time here and how just the woven fabric of time will be beautiful. It's not going to be some kind of a jumbled mess, which synergists and provisionists and people like that would like us to believe. It's going to be a beautiful woven tapestry of his purposes being accomplished. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Speaking of which, real quick, I'm going to go to a Barth Ehrman thing here. But I saved a graphic. And I don't know where this graphic came from. There are some graphics, the chick and the cat, I mean, how many thousands of variants of the chick and the cat meme have you seen? I mean, I have really lost track. Some of them are really good. Most of them are mediocre. Some of them are really bad. But there's this one meme where you've got the guy going like this, and then the next down below he's going, and then you'll put two things. So they've stuck it's really badly done, really cheapy, but what do you expect? This is the Texas Receptus guy, Nick Sayers, I think is his name. So the top one with the is expose some weird KJVO numerology, and as usual, make out all KJV/TR people are prone to this. And so this was after we did the thing. I played some of the video of the guy that was using that one app, where you can, what number this particular use of Lord is, how many out of all the uses of Lord in this particular verse, and this verse is what verse amongst all the verses in this book. And this is how you do all sorts of numerology, wacko craziness type stuff. So I had pointed out the silliness of all this stuff. So this came out, I think, the next day or the day after, something like that. So you've got expose some weird KJVO numerology, and then down below that it says, but then offer in its place some weird contradictory textual science /CBGM /art/voodoo stuff. So well, here, I should have, I'm sorry. You've got the thing connected over there. I just need to put this down and do that. Yeah, so there it is. There it is. So you see that meme, you see that thing all the time. And like I said, they stuck my face on it and it's pretty bad. But then offer in its place some weird contradictory textual science CBGM /art/voodoo stuff. So I'm like, okay, voodoo stuff. That's coming from somebody I'm pretty certain hasn't actually done any reading on what CBGM is, because fundamentally what CBGM is based upon the largest, most exhaustive collation of the largest number of manuscripts that have ever been done. And it's allowing the computer to be able to compare massive data sets that the human mind can't do. That's not voodoo, and that's not art. It's history. Now, those of you who go back and listen to my first introductions to CBGM, one of my questions then, and that I still have now, is exactly how CBGM maintains the text in its historical context, because it It doesn't look at witnesses as manuscripts. It looks at the text, not the dating, not the manuscript, things like that. So it sort of dehistoricizes it. And that's, that was one of the very first questions I had. And Peter Gurry talks about it in his dissertation. And, those are still questions. And until we have all of it done, which hopefully we will in a few years, I'm not sure we can necessarily really start digging into the answers to all those questions. But voodoo? No. I'll tell you what voodoo is. It's looking at Revelation 16:5 and turning it into this is the most important thing on the planet. It's a textual emanation. Okay. I don't remember when I first saw this. It's a Barth Ehrman video, and it's less than a minute long. Maybe that's what attracted me to it. We have spent hours and hours and hours. It's been 15 years now since my debate with Barth Ehrman in Tampa, Florida. And, there have been a number of times. I think once we did look into trying to arrange another debate. It was $25,000 price tag on it, just straight up front. And we have one of the things we wanted to debate him on was his claim that if you say that Jesus is Yahweh, that makes you a Sabellianist, a modalist, which only demonstrates he doesn't have a clue what the doctrine of the Trinity actually is. And so I've said a number of times, when it comes to Barth Ehrman, if he's talking history, text criticism, and stuff like that, he's normally going to be accurate with his facts, not necessarily conclusions, but with his facts. When it comes to theology, he is a novice. At best, a novice. And I remember talking to Phil Johnson about him, and he had said, he pretty much slept through theology class at Moody Bible Institute. And so the theological statements that he makes are often just embarrassingly simplistic and erroneous. He's just not good at theology at all. He's not trained in it, and yet because he has a PhD in textual criticism and the rise of the early Proto-Alexandrian text type, which isn't even really relevant anymore after CBGM, and a certain early church father, yes, I've read his dissertation, does not give him expertise in these areas at all. And so it's fascinating. In fact, I'm just waiting. They're taking their sweet time. He did and I wasn't going to watch it live. I just wanted to be able to catch it later. He did a thing with a Western Muslim scholar comparing the Bible and the Quran. Fascinating subject for me. And so I paid I could have watched it live, but didn't. And they're just taking their sweet time about finally getting the videos actually available, because that was the whole reason I bought it, is then you'd have access to that later on. So I could listen to the whole thing. Anyway, so I see this video, and I'm like, wow, that's worth taking the time to look at. So let's listen to Dr. Barth Ehrman. And like I said, I'll just play the whole thing all the way through, and then we can go back through if we need to. It's all of 52 seconds long, so here we go.
This is a really big theological problem. Why does God require his son to die? That's what the Christian tradition says. And it doesn't seem to be what Jesus taught. Jesus taught that God didn't require a payment. You get forgiveness. And when you think about it theologically, it's a very troubling idea that God requires a payment. Kind of the common answer for that is because God had to have justice. He had to have a sacrifice. Well, who made that the necessity? In other words, is there some power greater than God that is requiring him to do something in order to forgive sins? Theologically, it creates such a huge problem that theologians outside of evangelical Christians find the doctrine of atonement the most difficult thing to figure out. And some of them just throw up their hands and say, look, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. So, One of the things that caught my attention about this is my work with Muslims, with Islam, because of Surah 417, the denial of the crucifixion, the denial of atonement. There is no mediator in Islamic theology. And unlike Barth Ehrman, I have stood in mosques around the world, mainly in South Africa, also in London and in Australia, and have debated Muslims on these very issues. And in fact, as I think about that first debate that was literally in the mosque, I stood where the imam had just led the prayers, right in front of the Qibla. October of 2013, so 11 years ago. The topic was how we have peace with God. I was debating Shabir Ali. And so this was exactly what we were talking about. Why did there need to be an atonement? And the first question that Yasser Qadi asked me in his mosque when we did the 2-night dialogue was, why did a part of God have to die? So in reaching the Muslim world, this is central. But if what Barth Ehrman is saying is true, then it may even be irrelevant to reaching the Muslim world at all. Not that he would believe we have a message that's coherent and factually true to present anyway. But unfortunately, it is a topic that a lot of evangelical Christians have not put a lot of thought into. I think for a lot of Christians, they've picked up their theology of atonement from music more than they have from sermon, more than they have from sermon series, more than they have from reading excellent works that delve into the topic and talk about different perspectives and allow you to have a balanced understanding of, if you believe in penal substitutionary atonement, that doesn't mean that you reject Christus Victor or these other ways of understanding things, because they're not meant to be mutually exclusive. And then you've got people like Steve Chalk and people over in the UK, this would be cosmic child abuse and this kind of utter foolishness. But it's amazing that Ehrman would have such a simplistic presentation, because we're talking about over a few thousand years establishing his people, giving them a law, giving them tabernacle ceremonies that first become temple ceremonies, sacrifices that are all looking forward to something else. They're prefiguring something else. Something is coming in the future. Now, Barth Ehrman can't see that because Barth Ehrman doesn't believe that the Bible is in any way, shape, or form consistent. There is no book in the Bible, I think, that he would say is consistent with itself. He would allow for contradiction and error and redaction and everything else in every book of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, but the New Testament as well. And so even talking about the idea of a prophetic preparation, the law looking forward to Christ, picturing Christ, shadows, types, and fulfillments, all that's out. Doesn't matter if that's what the New Testament writers told us. That's irrelevant. Half of what you got in the New Testament's fraud and fake and all the rest of this stuff. So there's a reason why theologically, he's utterly crippled. He doesn't have a source of theology. That's how it works. But when you get to this subject, it's not like the New Testament isn't clear. It's not that there is a force outside of God. And it's not a matter of, quote unquote, a payment. The amazing teaching of the New Testament is that God has provided a means to bring mankind back into relationship with himself that demonstrates God's justice and all of his attributes. So his wrath, his justice, his holiness, his love, his mercy, and his grace, all demonstrated in the drama of salvation, primarily in and through the person of Jesus Christ. So it's not that there's a force outside of God demanding this. And Jesus does not say, oh, you can just get forgiveness. There's no payment that needs to be made. Jesus says it is necessary that the Son of Man go to Jerusalem and be betrayed and beaten and killed and buried and rise again the third day. And it's necessary, and again, you and I sit here and go, has he read Luke 24? From Moses onward, they're all talking about me. And yeah, but he doesn't have to factor any of that in. He can pick and choose whatever he wants, create his own version of the theology in the New Testament, and just leave everything else out. That's the glory. That's the cheap way of unbelieving critical scholarship. You don't have to worry about it. You can come up with whatever you want. And then just use your authority to say, this is, look at the New Testament, this is what Jesus taught. Well, no, it's not what Jesus taught. What about this over here? Well, we don't think that's original. It doesn't fit the mold, When you listen to him talking about, the New Testament's presentation, the reason we know that Paul didn't write 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus is the view of the church that it presupposes didn't develop until much later in history. And how do you know that? Well, it's my theory. And if Paul actually did write this, then your theory would be refuted, right? Scholarship is so much fun at times. But anyway, so here he starts talking about, well, this is just so very confusing. And it's like, no, it's not. If you'll allow the New Testament to speak with any kind of harmony, then it speaks of the necessity of what Christ did. It speaks of him in his offices as king, as high priest. And you put Hebrews, Romans, and Galatians together, and you get a real clear picture of what God has done in Christ, the harmony of the Father and the Son and the Spirit in accomplishing all of this. It's not like Jesus is a victim here, in the sense of God has done some bad thing to him and he wishes it hadn't happened. He didn't see it coming or any of this type of stuff. And of course, again, I have to remind you, it's been years and years. We used to, 10, 12 years ago, we would play all these Barth Ehrman debates and frequently end up having to criticize the Christian that he was debating for wimping out in front of him. But we pointed out that, from Barth Ehrman's perspective, what he does, he looks at the Gospels and he puts them in contradiction to one another. And so Mark's view of Jesus is this: he's out of control. He doesn't see the crucifixion coming. John, he's in control of everything. Matthew and Luke are trying to fix Mark. And so you've got this mess. And so from his perspective, the real Jesus certainly didn't know this was coming, and hence would not have said anything about the Son of Man giving his life for the world, or, rising again the third day, or any of that kind of stuff, because that's just all contradictory mishmash. And we know there is no prophecy. God, nobody can know the future because God doesn't speak. These are the foundational theological assumptions of the agnostic, Barth Ehrman. And that's why what he pretends to say about theology is just such a mess. And so Jesus can specifically talk about this stuff, but Jesus didn't think, he knew. You just get forgiveness and no problem. There's nothing that needs to go along in the way. And from his perspective, what's written outside of the Gospels would just be completely outside of Jesus' purview. Jesus didn't know that was ever going to happen. You can't really put that stuff together. And so this is how he can say the things that he says and get away with it. But we need to be able to explain, not only to the people who've been confused by Barth Ehrman, but by for our Muslim friends, things like that. What you have here is the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, working together, taking different roles in the accomplishment of salvation. It's not the Father becomes incarnate. It's not the Spirit who becomes incarnate. It is the Son. And there is and I'll use the term mystery only in the sense that I'm using it. It goes beyond simplistic human definition. But there is when you see the cross, when you see the interaction of the Father and the Son, when you see Jesus saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, there is great depth here that personally I would say is beyond the commentary of an agnostic to begin with. But still, from a Christian understanding, there is much that needs to be handled very, very carefully when we think of what is happening at that moment. When the Son, as the God-man, bears the wrath of God for all of his chosen people. And the necessity does not come from outside of God. It comes from God's nature. The necessity of the atonement is the necessity of the vindication of God. It's theodicy. It is the vindication of why he created the way he created. Now, I'm speaking for Reformed people here. Synergists, provisionists, and others aren't in this conversation. They have to go have their own conversation, how they're going to respond to Barth Ehrman, because they're not going to respond to Barth Ehrman the way that we are. They have no decree. They hate the decree. They attack the decree. They mock the decree regularly. And so they can't provide the answer that we do. I don't know what kind of answer I'll leave it up to them. But the reality is that this is the mechanism whereby the triune God demonstrates his justice in creation, redemption, and final consummation. And that does not come from outside. It comes from the fact that justice is the foundation of his throne, as the Psalter tells us. And so he takes upon himself, through the incredible condescension of the incarnation, the means by which his people will be redeemed, and by which his commitment to justice and his commitment to grace and mercy are both seen in fullness. And Ehrman doesn't understand any of that. He can't. He doesn't have a foundation to. It's beyond him. Literally, it's beyond him. He may have once professed that, but he doesn't believe it any longer, so it's beyond him. And so this needs to be something, it should be something that Christians contemplate regularly. It should be, as we partake of the supper, for example, this should be something that we are considering. It's forced upon us. The elements, the broken bread, the wine, body, blood, new covenant in my blood. This is the Son speaking, the establishment of this. If you're thinking about that, and you're not just thinking about it, what it means to you, that is part of it. You know, I presided over the supper last night. I preached yesterday at Apologia. out of Nehemiah 9, if anyone's interested. Hopefully somewhat of a challenging sermon. You might want to look it up. But I mentioned to the people, this is a time for us to be reminded of the great price of our redemption. Great price of our redemption. But it also is a time to be considering the great condescension of the Son, the obedience of the Son to the Father, and the relationship of Father and Son. That's one of the reasons I think it's in the music. God turned his back on his Son, stuff like that. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. It's not what Scripture says. When Jesus quotes Psalm 22, he's not saying he's been left alone. This is the point of his highest obedience to the Father. This is the whole reason why he came. He's quoting Psalm 22 as a fulfillment of himself. And so thinking about that relationship between the Father and the Son should be a part of our meditation in the supper. And sometimes the supper is so fast you don't have much time to be doing much meditation, but it should be something we're considering beforehand. The way we do the supper at Apologia, it can't go fast, so you normally do have time to do that. But we are told, do this in remembrance of me. And so that should include a remembrance of what he taught about his relationship with the Father, what he was doing, and that accomplishment. And so this kind of an objection by Barth Ehrman should, for any serious-minded Christian, be something that we can respond to fairly easily, and to recognize that, man, he's just not even taking into consideration, and cannot take into consideration, the vast majority of what we take into consideration when we consider these things, because we believe everything the Bible says. We believe it's revelation. We take Jesus' view of Scripture, not Barth Ehrman's view of Scripture. And that makes a huge and massive difference. But remember, unfortunately, this man has had a huge influence upon many, 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 many people. And so when you have people whose primary exposure to the Bible and to Christianity has come through one of his students, they're going to have tremendous misunderstandings, and unfortunately are going to probably be arrogant about thinking that their understanding is the right one. That's been my experience. That's certainly what my daughter ran into. That guy at Glendale Community College. Wow, what a mess he was. And he was a Barth Ehrman acolyte. And so you need to know where that stuff's coming from. Be prepared to give an answer at that point in time. So there you go. Bunch of different topics. Thankfully, I didn't delete the little list I had there. That's the only way I can write up the blog article afterwards. What was it we talked about again? And so Friday, and we might have to sneak one in. That's a long time. But Friday, Jason Wallace, Pastor Jason Wallace, Christ Presbyterian Church in up there in Magna, Utah, is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about Cyril Lucaris, the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, who was a Calvinist. And so if you have interest in the Eastern Orthodox subject and orthodoxy and what's going on in that, you'll find this to be really, really interesting. I'm pretty certain I linked to the video last week. I'll try to remember to link to it again when I write up the blog article today. But that will be on Friday, and I think I said 2 o'clock our time. I said 3 o'clock his time, which is 2 o'clock our time. So that will be 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So obviously we'll put that on the app. If you don't have the ANO app, you need to download it, get it on your phone, and you'll be ready to go. And we only have 6 days left for the Riche Pierre sign. Are you going to sign it? Sure you could. You could sign it on the back. That's nice and flat. The Riche Pierre multi-layer cross, the Isaiah line, ESV, Creeds and Confessions, Jeffrey Rice, Rebind. Raffle tickets are available at aomin.org, and that's to help get us back on the road. And Rich and I were at the RV earlier this morning, checking out the work that's being done. So, for example, just so you know, what are you doing? Having satin put on everything? No. Yeah, as soon it will just levitate and just, it's really, really cool stuff they're going to have. No, just to give you an example, when I first took it out, and I may have mentioned this on an earlier dividing line, we first took it out, I got to my first RV spot. The power plug is in the back. You pull it out. I plugged it in and nothing happened. And I think it was like an hour and a half that I was struggling with that. We were trying to find switches and all sorts of stuff. And then I just got the idea, well, why don't you just roll it back in and try it again? Because I started thinking, I've never had one of these before. Turns out that you had to sort of roll it in, roll it out, roll it in, roll it out, and then beep, it would start working. And there was a short in the mechanism with the cable. And so I learned to make it work, but that's not good to have a short in a 50 amp cable. That's a good way for things to go boom. So they had to replace the entire thing. It's one thing to go in and try to tighten up some stuff. You got a short like that, they just had to replace the entire thing. And since it's a used unit, it only had like 80 miles on it when I first pulled it out, we get to pay for those things. And so those raffle tickets help to keep the unit running and get us going. The next trip will be up to Colorado. We were trying to set up some debates. Ain't looking like that's going to happen right now. There's a lot of folks that are very brave on social media, but not so much when it's time to come face to face. So, but we have had folks up in Colorado Springs and Denver that have been trying to set something up that would be worthwhile debates, not food fights. You can always find somebody to have a food fight with. And I've certainly gotten to the age where food fights, not interested in that anymore. So anyways, looking forward to coming up to both Colorado Springs and Denver. And we'll be letting you know about the exact date. I've got the exact dates and stuff like that. But we're going to be talking about why does God matter up in Denver. And we'll let you know what the meeting times are and locations and stuff like that real quick. I haven't heard anything from that. So, all right. Thanks for watching The Dividing Line. I'm going to be on Iron Sharpens Iron in less than an hour with Joe Boot. And so head on over there. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching. God bless.